And I think that's a very important point for me. And it doesn't have to be for you, but my four directions gives me the opportunity, as Donna pointed out, to redirect sooner and more efficiently. And what do I redirect back to? The four directions. And because I do that, I reinforce the four directions and I create more space, more opportunity to learn, more opportunity to grow, more opportunity to communicate, to hear other people, to where I could maybe repeat them back. And I become more accessible to power, and I could, and I mean the forces outside of my bubble of perception that are coming in. I can be more accessible, or my bubble of perception in a certain state could become more perceptible to yours. And when I talk about bubbles of perception, this is just another way of talking about stuff, you know. And I think that we've talked together long enough that it's like, okay, I kind of know what Ernest is talking about. So it's just good words to use so we can communicate. But the four directions creates what I call the bubble of perception. How? Like, what does that mean? Well, I am keenly aware, hopefully, of some aspect of what we would commonly consider our exterior environment, whether that's a sound that's occurring, I'm doing something with my visual acuity, I'm somehow maybe paying attention to certain scents, especially like early spring, or since I found out that humans can smell a very small amount of it's that it's that just rain in the soil smell. And I was fascinated by that. So I've been trying to like after it rains, I'm just going out there. I'm like, can I smell that?
Smells different than snow, too. Smells
Yeah.
like rain, smells like rain's coming, smells like snow's
Mhm.
coming.
And
Yeah.
of course biologists are, they're really interested in what does that mean, like evolutionarily, like it must mean that humans were trying to find water sources, and it's all just fascinating. But the bottom line is that for me, this practice creates what I call the bubble of perception. And so I'm creating this bubble through the four directions. My body is inside of that bubble of perception. It's the center of it. And I'm aware of that because that's one aspect of my four directions. My breath is what is expanding and actually creating what I consider like the cocoon or shell-like structure of this bubble of perception. And then my cognitive direction, in the beginning, I would just sometimes imagine like a shell or a cocoon-like structure. That's why I'm using that term. But there's a lot of implications with the bubble of perception. There is, you're filling it with yourself, right? And there's implications in terms of conscious creation. Donna mentioned several times that a lot of her life experience seems to be very purposeful. It seems to be very educational. It seems to be very deliberate. And of course, that is when we fill that bubble of perception. What are you doing on a spirit scale? Right? You're filling it. Like you're putting your perception out there. You're expanding, but you're still aware of your body. So it's not going to go too far aloof because you're still grounded in the physical, the corporeal soul is balancing and interacting with that ethereal and energetic aspect that Donna's talking about. And for me, in my practice, that is of vital importance because that's where conscious creation also comes from. I am placing the things in that bubble of perception, including my emotional state. Everything is in that bubble of perception. My emotional state is in that bubble of perception. So it's a part of my personal practice, doesn't have to be yours, but all throughout the day, I call these considerations because it is more tricky to hold this. Like it's so I consider, where is my emotion in this moment? What am I filling into my bubble of perception? And is it deliberate? Is it intentional? Is it what I want? And then every now and then, an understanding of why or why it isn't will arrive on its own, and I can learn from that. But for me, this practice, the four directions, redirection, everything that we're talking about, is to create this, and I kind of referred this as I referred to this as hydrostasy, or an effect of you are filling. And a lot of the times I would fill my cognitive direction with imagining that I'm filling this with light, filling this with energy. And so to me, it's getting a little bit more out there, but I can only maintain this bubble of perception with the four directions and with certain considerations, such as death as my advisor, such as taking personal responsibility for all of my thoughts, all of my actions, you know? And that's kind of how sometimes these views, they go well beyond what people are normally talking about, or sometimes maybe even ready to talk about, right? Because it's a very personal thing. That's why Don Juan always referred to it as personal power. We have no business trying to evaluate or judge or interact unless we're asked certain questions, or there's, in his world, certain omens. And then real quick, Donna, before I take the hand, I see you have a raised hand. But I have to mention that in Chinese medicine, they look at things in terms of yin and yang, but not as polar opposites. It's how are they interacting? How are they changing? And from birth, you know, being born to about 7 or 8 is called basically energy brightness, energy rising. And the way that this is viewed in Chinese medicine is you can look at a figure of a human, and at the top is Shen, and that's spirit. And then you have the human being, but spirit is considered more yang. It's higher. It's the active fundamental activity and motor force behind everything. So of course, through thousands of years of observation, the Chinese have noticed through medicine that children at this age are Shen yang brightness. You know, their eyes. Where do we see Shen in Chinese medicine? Is seen through the eyes, of course, and then from the eyes, it's seen in the complexion, it's seen in the posture, it's seen in the excitement, it's seen in the complete lack of psychological suffering and interference from psychological processes that get in the way of our ability to connect to the universe around us just naturally, just doing it, right? Soaking it up and dishing it out. Yeah, they're soaking it up, but at a certain age, if they're left allowed to, they'll give you something to soak up, right? They'll exude that energy, and it's totally natural. It's totally cool. It's totally okay. Excuse me, I just want to say that this is actually according to Chinese medicine, that this is the most natural time, and it is still going to be young energy for quite some time, right? Like, because we still have our high school, we still got our hot-blooded, times, and of course we're getting more towards, as a species, got to procreate, and that's a lot of young energy. And then you get to where some of us in this group are now, we're starting to settle a little bit into the yin, right? Where yang is something that we really have to try to um, create a practice around, so that we can also have that brightness in our bubble of perception, because the world has a lot of that interference, and that interference fundamentally suffocates it. That's what we would call when we would talk in like law of attraction speak, that is interference. That is what the resistance is, this resistance um, factor that is being introduced between what should be two smoothly flowing. And is it two? Not really, but we have this mind and this body, so we often do perceive things as binary opposites. That's how we perceive them. You got to work with that. So that's great stuff, and I think that is a really important point regarding the practice and what we're doing. And I think that Shayna and we had felt that type of thing. Sometimes it happens through practice, sometimes it can happen through happenstance too, where we were traveling to Sedona and we just met people and just spoke and interacted with those people because we were traveling and there was less resistance. We were in the vacation mode. We're like, everything is new and bright, and let's get some crystals and let's do some meditation and go on some hot. And that is one way of arriving there. And I'm not taking anything away from it either. That is a way of arriving there. Maybe that can be included as a ritualistic thing someday that you want to do, who cares? But yeah, and then synchronicity is a word to describe basically when Shen is aligned with, or Shen, as I'm using this word, is spirit, right? It's the opposite of the physical. And we're just talking about this in very basic ways to talk about it. It's not the right way of talking about spirit and energy. It's just we have can't see, very, very rarefied, scattered, seemingly maybe, and then more coalesced. That's the way we have to work with our environment. So sometimes we talk that way.